Hey, hey, hey. Thank you for tuning in to Grieving Voices. Today, my guest is Chris Cochran. He is a father, husband, and founder of Blue Chip Solutions. Inspired by his son Christian's enduring positivity, Chris authored What's Good About Today to share a message of resilience and gratitude. Professionally, he has over 3 decades of experience in leadership roles across various industries and serves on the board of Coeptus Therapeutics. Through his nonprofit, also named What's Good About Today, Chris is committed to spreading kindness and hope. I hope I said that right. Coeptus Therapeutics, is that
That's
correct?
right. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Most people
Okay.
butcher that. Yeah.
I am on a roll and it's only Tuesday. So thank you so much for being here. And before we hopped on, I was actually checking out it's your son's the website is
hmm
christiancochran.org, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And I was reading a little bit about how that the backstory of why that got started, but I will actually leave that to you to share with our listeners why What's Good About Today came to be.
So Christian, I lost my son to cancer, terminal cancer in 2021. Christian was diagnosed at the age of 22 with something called cholangiocarcinoma. He had just graduated college. He was everything was going swimmingly. Everything's been going well, obviously, as a family. And, sort of backstory to this is, I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We've been together since I was 15 years old. So our dream has always been to build a family together. And, we knew early on we wanted to name our son Christian because the name had so much importance, right? Christian, it means what it is. We are Christians, and we knew he was destined for something very important in this world, and he didn't fail us on that because, even as a young age, he showed this incredible form of empathy and just understood how life really worked even at a young age. He had great compassion and kindness, whether it was at Christmas times he wanted to give his gifts away to his friends. I mean, whether it was just we used to refer to him as Mr. Comfort as a child because he had a way of comforting us when we were not feeling well or not doing well. So he just had this incredible knack, and that kind of carried all the way through his life as a teenager. You always think of kids as being teenagers; they're horrible and terrible. Christian was fantastic. He was just a kind and gentle soul to everyone, giving of his time, his love. Always said he loved you, and then Christian, very talented, by the way, but his biggest talents, of course, were his kindness. Christian went to college. He graduated magna cum laude from college, from the Honors College here in Pennsylvania. And when he got home, he started to experience some back pain. We took him to doctors. It seemed to be, he was healthy. Everything about him was healthy, and he got physical therapy in his back, but this didn't seem to change. But as it got, in the summer months of 2020, his pain became overwhelming. And so went, and of course, we had blood tests, and ultimately he had a CT scan to be safe. And I remember them saying, hey, they found a lesion, a scar on his liver. And of course, as a parent, you're like, okay, that's not so bad. We can, that could have been from birth or whatever. And then they said you need to go to Hillman Cancer Institute. And I remember thinking, oh no, what does that mean? I kept reassuring Christians, okay, now Christian through this whole thing is it's okay. I'm not worried about it, Dad. It's gonna be okay. Reassured his whole family. But we went to the hospital. This is during COVID, so I can only go with Christian. And I'll never forget, just before they walked in and telling Christian everything's gonna be fine, they were gonna sort of talk to us. 5 coats walked in the door, lab coats with the mask, and I could read their eyes in that instant what they were about to deliver to us, that I knew was going to be life changing for Christian, life changing for his family and his friends. And ultimately, they told Christian that he had a grapefruit-sized tumor on his liver, and that this was cancer, and that it was likely terminal. At the time, we weren't fully positive, but I think Christian knew because he asked the doctors immediately. And my knees started to shake. My eyes started to go black. Christian put his hand on my shoulder. He looked me in the eye, said, "Dad, don't worry. Everything's going to be okay." Once again, comforting me in the worst of moments for him. And he asked him how long did he have to live, and they wouldn't answer that question, rightly so, I assume. But I knew, and I think Christian knew this is what was going to happen. Of course, we left, had to go home, had to tell his mother what had transpired. He had to be there with us. And I remember my wife and I telling Christian as we're obviously in shock and sad and just saying, "Christian, we're so sorry that you have to go through this. You know, what this has happened to you." And I remember Christian saying, "Dad, Mom, don't, it's okay. I would rather this happen to me than anyone else. This is my burden to take." And, again, he just showed us his way of comforting us. Um, I can tell you that Christian, not a single time from the moment he got diagnosed to the moment he took his last breath on September 1st of 2021, about a year later, did he ever complain. He never said, "Why me?" He said, "Dad, how could this happen to me?" He did the opposite. He would say, "What's good about today?" And so it was his way of showing us that even in the worst of moments, in the most tragic of circumstances, that you can truly find goodness in moments. And so he used to remind us of that. He used to say, "What's good about today?" when we would cry and we'd be upset. We try not to cry, of course, and remain very hopeful. But we knew the circumstances. Christian had a less than 1% chance of life, even to get to 5 years. And with cholangiocarcinoma, which is by layman's terms called bile duct cancer, it's mostly seen in old people, Southeast Asia. It's not something you find for a kid in North Pittsburgh, you know. And he we knew I knew ultimately what was going to happen here. And in young people in particular who get this, when they get it, it's very rare, they don't live past 6 months. So, we knew we were up against the fight. And so to answer your question, it's a long story to get to it, but the point being is that Christian used what's good about today to remind us of the beauty that you can find every day, even in the most difficult of moments. And that's what I try to do, is to, remember that constantly so that I can put that out into the world, remind people that, hey, here's a kid who had everything going for him. I tell you, he had everything going for him in this life, but he was handed the worst thing you could ever ask for. And he turned it completely around and he thrived. He got a job. Who goes and gets a job with a major company? Because we had to stay intern. He took a job for 4 months. They hired him. He was honest and said, "Look, I'm not going to be around in a year, just so you know." And they were like, "It's okay, God bless them for doing that." But he wanted to show us and guide us that his life hadn't stopped, and he wasn't going to stop showing his brother and his sister and us that he wasn't going to stop. He was going to continue to move forward. He made music, he did podcasts, which are still out there, and they're very good. And he just had that way about him, and he laughed, and he always was making you laugh. And so he was just an extraordinary human being. I just want to help. I'm inspired by Christians, so that my job is to continue to get that message out as much as I can.
Sounds like he was an old soul.
Yeah, he was an old soul. He's probably lived five other people's lifetimes, in the short, 22, 23 years of age that he had. He had traveled the world. He'd been to India. He had been to Prague, studied abroad in India. He'd done a lot. He lived big. And when I say big, he was, even as a character, he was the lead in every musical and every play. He'd been nominated for Gene Kelly Awards here in Pittsburgh, which are a big deal. He was a kid who had already been in a major motion picture. And he was, he was moving everything forward. But I think instinctively he knew that. I think he knew his life was going to be short. That's probably why he lived so big. And we just, I think it makes sense, I guess now, in a sense, how big he lived, that it was so short. But but that's what we have to deal with today. And that was 3 years ago. So yeah, he passed away.
What was he studying in college?
So Christian was an international studies major. He minored in Asian studies and he was a theater minor. So he was also in college. He would be in plays and things like that. And he was in comedy troupes. He was also a DJ. I say I can keep going because there's so much this kid did. He was local Limelight radio station in Indiana, PA. He was also on there as well. So which we love to listen to. And just as parents, we were so happy. We loved just hearing his voice. And so, we listened to him. So yeah, that's what he studied. And like he loved to travel. He was a minimalist too. He was an extreme minimalist because, I do pretty well for myself. I'm not, I always have and do well. And my kids have been lucky enough to live in a nice home, nice neighborhood and nice cars and all those things. Christian was such a minimalist. He didn't even like to drive our cars. He just didn't he thought any of that stuff was too showy or the act of just packing a suitcase was enough for him to go somewhere to meet people. Whatever was on his back was fine with him. He was very authentic, extremely funny, but at the same time incredibly compassionate about his fellow man, just incredibly compassionate. And I knew that, but when your son passes, your child passes, and things start to pour on. You've been on the website christiancochran.org. You can see the messages, the stories that just pour in of the legacy that he has left upon so many and continues to this day to leave on so many. There's not enough earthly words to use other than they're extraordinary. And I feel so privileged that I got to be his dad.
We never really understand or know our impact, do we? I think
Not
it's,
till not till we're not here, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite memory of him? Do you have a few or one that you would like to share?
My favorite mem. Well, I mean, of course, there's so many. There's no real favorites. I think anything where I got to be in the light of Christian was my favorite moments. I don't, he was funny. Sometimes his jokes were so big, they went over my head. They were like multi-layered jokes. He had this because he was incredibly intelligent too, right? Um, he had a photographic memory. He had a quick wit, which can, if you heard his pocket, he's just quick-witted. He understood things quick. He was very knowledgeable. But my best memories of Christian and best stories of Christian, there's stories, of course, while he had cancer that are funny. But and I can tell you that one, I like to focus on the things when he didn't have cancer, but I can tell you that I went on a long walk with Christian up to the point which, we used to go on walks because I wanted him to continue to be, walk and keep himself healthy and eat right. And we would go on these walks. And it was one of the latter walks, probably 3 months before he passed away. And I remember walking with him and I said to Christian, what regrets do you have in this life? What can you put onto me? Because I always looked at Christian as like a philosopher. He understood things so deeply. And and he said, Dad, yeah, I have one regret. I do have one regret. So I hung on every word of that regret. I said, well, what's the regret, son? He was probably like something I did wrong or something. I yelled at him and he's like, no, Dad. He's like, I did too much homework. And I just started laughing. I said, what do you mean you did too much? He goes, no, I mean it, Dad. That's the biggest regret I have in this life that I've been on this earth is that I did way too much homework. I could have been doing other things. And it was just, and I used to always laugh because he hardly did any homework. I mean, he really didn't. This was the kid. I tell you this, his roommates would laugh because and be so jealous of Christian. He would go to class. He never bought a book. I never had to pay for a book for college, ever. Think about that. He just would go to class. He memorized the information. He would take class. He was a straight A student. I remember his first year in college. He looked at me, he goes, because I was always on him, like, you got to get in, you be a good student. He looked at me and goes, Dad, is this a big scam? Is this a scam? I go, what do you mean, is this a scam? He goes, college. Seems like a scam. It's too easy. I don't understand. Now he's in the honors college too, so they're pushing him, you know. But he just he yeah, he didn't like to do his homework. But he clearly he said he did too much homework. But he was just that made me laugh and you know, there's he had this incredible laugh too that I love to just be in the aura. Sometimes the last year of his life, I moved a lot of his. He liked video games because he got to speak to his friends, you know. And this is during COVID, and I always positioned my chair in the living room where we're at that I could get a glance in to see him play his video games because I just liked watching him, you know, because he was funny and he was making jokes and so I found that you know those moments with Christian, it's his laugh and his stories, his jokes, his comedy, and just how he made you feel good. He was the grown up. He was always the grown up.
You know, parents that have lost a child, um, especially like with a terminal illness, well, I would say anybody who has a family member that's diagnosed with a terminal illness, there's this um, phase of denial, I suppose. Even towards the end, you know, it's really difficult to let go and accept what's happening. What did you, how did you navigate that for you and your wife? And what advice would you impart onto people listening to this who find themselves in the same situation?
That's a tough question because, you know, everybody goes through it so differently and how they manage this. I mean, I've learned a lot, of course, after the fact, right? So I can impart some knowledge, whether someone who's going through it, you know, I think someone would tell me that, would I be able to take that information properly? I'm not sure I
Mm-hmm.
could, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned that I've learned two things. One is to be humble before God. That's my most important, you know, I'm always humbled, you know, that I'm not worthy of his love. Um, the second thing is you're not in control. And when you realize you don't have the control, you kind of let go of a lot of things. You can flow a little bit easier in this life, I think. Um, but to answer your question during that time, I've been around and I've listened to your podcast, you know, and I've heard people talk, and ha some people haven't been around the end of life situations. They've either, you know, it's new to them. And for me, you know, I was raised in a Lutheran family. I'm a Catholic now, but was raised in a Lutheran, a strong mother who was very religious. She took me to church all the time. I was an altar boy, you know, all those things. But my mom would take me to nursing homes, and she would. So death was always sort of part of life. I understood that as a kid. I always accepted that as sort of the reality of how life was going to work. Certainly, it's not, I don't like the reality that my child is taken from me. It's in the natural order that your parents go, and I've lost my parents, and I know what that felt like, and doesn't feel anything like this. It's different. This is like sticky glue. It just it's so stuck on me. I can't, you're never going to get it off. You can't. But I think to answer your question is, I think from my perspective and how we navigated that, for me, I understood the ultimate outcome. I knew early on what was going to happen. Now, I never told my wife that. I never told you know, they were looking for hope, right? And I always gave hope. I'm not a downer guy. And I did. We worked very hard and we went to every doctor in the world. We went to the best facilities around this country. I had the means by which to do this. I was fortunate. Christian felt guilty. This is, he's dying. He feels guilty. He felt privileged. He said he felt so challenged by the guilt of that we gave him the special privileges to meet with the best doctors in the world on this to try to solve this problem. He got on the best possible drugs, DNAs and RNAs and sequencing. I mean, the amount of things we went through to save this kid's life was not good enough. And but I knew ultimately time was, it was always ticking in my head. The clock was always ticking. And I could hear the clock ticking constantly. And I think for my wife, I tried to shield my kids and my wife from the reality of that. It's only towards the end when his body would break down in the last month, when you could see what cancer does to the body and everything. But but Christian remained humorous to the very end and continued to think about us to the very end. But I think the way you navigate, the only way you can do is to push yourself forward, to know that you just do the best you can. That's all you can do, and show immense love for one another. Um, and know you have to show love for one another when it ends too, because that part of the year is extraordinarily difficult. I try not to think about it. I write about it, of course, but it's even difficult to even think about it because there's so much that went on that was difficult to go through, especially the last month, the last month and a half. But afterwards is incredibly difficult for families and for husbands and wives. Statistically, they don't stay together, you know, and families fall apart because we don't understand each other's grief. And that's true. I can tell you for the first year, I didn't understand my wife's grief because she's grieving to me. Who else can she grieve to? And I'm grieving to her. And you cannot you when two people do that, one has to, I suppose, you have to listen. You have to be able to absorb it as best you can and be there for that person and recognize that each person is going through grief very differently. My kids are going through, they just lost their best friend, their brother. And how do you navigate that and be compassionate and patient and so I think give yourself patience and love and give it as best you can to everyone around you. In the end, you know, it, I never, it never gets, I like to get better. It just it gets a little smoother, I suppose. The edges aren't as rough and you can navigate it a little bit better. You can navigate this life daily a little bit better. And that's really how we do as a family. We navigate it. I navigate life daily. It's a daily thing. I don't look in the past too much, and I really don't look to the future because the future is uncertain. I have no idea. I've witnessed something that I thought I understood. The future was so bright, but it got taken from me and the family and from Christian. And so I can't look too far in the future. I know what I have today. I know, and I think that's important. Be present, be grateful for the moments that you have. And um, and if you know you're someone who's going to pass, and I knew with Christian, I memorized every crease on his body possible. I have it, it's locked in my head. So um, I think it's just making sure you do those things.
So, what did that look like for you and your spouse, and then holding the weight of your children's grief as well? I mean, did you seek support, each of you individually, outside of each other?
Yeah, well, the first year, um, I think anybody goes through this and just doing my research, you may know better than I, but for us, it was like being a zombie. It's as if it didn't even happen. I couldn't even tell you that year what I remember. To me, it's just a complete black hole because it wasn't, I wouldn't even say it was bad, if this makes sense, because the second year was the worst. And the third year's horrible too. I'm in my third year. It's still not good. I mean, it's worse than the first year because the first year you're in such shock that life got turned on a dime so quickly. And that happens to families all over this world, right? Their life gets turned on a dime in an instant, in a second. Life can be so beautiful and perfect. And then it gets turned and you're upside down and you have no idea why would this happen, and you ask those questions of why God you do this, why could you have done this to us? We're a good family, we go to church every week, we love each other, we're always trying to do all the right things that's asked of us, and it still happens to us. So once you get past the whys and all those things and acceptance, I think for us it was, yeah, we did go to therapy. I'm not a therapy guy. Yeah, I'm not a guy. I've tried it, of course, and that's something for individuals, whatever they want to do, what's good for them, right? That's why we say grieving is different for every single person. Part of my grieving or part of my therapy is talking to you. Part of my therapy is being able to talk about Christian story, writing the book, having interactions with others, gives me the chance to express whatever I feel and be authentic to that, right? Um, but I do therapy when my wife will ask me to do therapy. If she's going and she says, "Hey, let's go as a couple. I want you to come with me." Whatever she wants, I will do that. That's no, I will do it in a heartbeat. It's no problem for me. And I'm fully engaged with that. But I just don't feel like I find when I come out of therapy, I feel worse. So
Mm.
in some ways because it is a safe space that I unload a lot in my head. And some people can go, "Oh, that must feel good because you get everything out." But for me, it's like I just unloaded and it's just it resonates too much in my brain and I think for me as a person, it's difficult. But for most, my wife, it's great and it works. You just got to find the right person who's compassionate and loving and listens and there's no judgment. And if you do that, it's a wonderful thing. Very important to navigate it.
Your other children, they're close in age to Christian?
His sister is 15 months younger than Christian. So they're like, just beyond being Irish twins, as they call it. I think it's, what is it, 12 months or something? Yeah, they're like Irish twins. Best friends. She went to the same college he went to. All my kids go to the same college. It's about an hour and a half away from here. And yeah, they're best friends and they were at college together and he wrote all her papers. Poor kid, she would rely on him. But
Maybe that was that homework he kept doing.
yeah,
That
well, it
wasn't his.
was. It was. He was always doing things, and he didn't just do it for my kids. I mean, he'd have friends at prestigious schools like Purdue and amazing schools, and they go, "Christian, I need help writing a paper. Can you help me write something and come up with ideas?" And he was that smart. He just come up with great ideas and help. He's a beautiful writer. As a matter of fact, during Christian's cancer, I put this. It's actually, I think, on his website. Christian wrote his entrance paper. Just I guess I don't know what they call that, but his entrance to get into grad school. So this is a kid again. In the summer, he passed away September 1st. He applied for graduate school in I think June or something, May or June. He got accepted. His paper was beautiful. And it was just all about, how privileged his life was, how fortunate he has been. And he wanted to dedicate his life. I mean, if he survived, that he was going to dedicate his life to helping those who were left alone with this awful disease. He wanted to be with um he wanted to go over. He felt that there were a lot of people dying overseas that had this disease, that were dying alone with someone not with them, and he wanted to be with them. So it's a beautiful paper, well written, and so yeah, his sister, was 15 months below him. Totally different than Christian. She's the wild one. She's just full of energy and always causing trouble. She's sort of in between two boys. Right? My youngest is a boy, and so she's got to fight with those two boys. Um, but yeah, she's a good girl, and she's married, lives in Norfolk, Virginia, married to a naval officer who serves overseas on the USS Cole, and but she's and works for a bank, major bank. And then my younger son, he is a Nicholas. He is a junior now at the same college, studying the exact same thing as Christian at college.
how did you support them through that whole ordeal, that year that he was when he was diagnosed, and after that? And
Well, during the year, I
like,
don't,
how do you hold all of that, right? Like, how do you
yeah.
hold all of that?
Well, my wife's a nurturer, okay? She's a it's truly a beautiful human soul, and she's a yoga instructor, so she's in tune. She's just a beautiful person and beautiful. Um, she's nurturing, so she's there for those. She's there for the two kids, and I think my mindset was very different then. I was all about trying. I'm a doer. If someone says dig a ditch, my head's focused on digging the ditch. I'm not really thinking about everything else. I'm throwing dirt out, right? To me, I was digging a ditch. I was trying to save my son's life, you know? So it was a 24/7 operation, you know, and I mean it was 24/7, I didn't sleep a ton. You catch cat naps when you could, but it was always my daily routine was just work, work, work. Not my work. My work was doing what it needed to do, but was working on solving this challenge with Christian. And I wasn't alone in it. My wife certainly helped. Her sister and her brother-in-law helped. We called it the CC Advisory Group. We were just a kind sort of this group that would get together, talk about solutions, figure things out. Where's the best place? Don't agree with, and I say this, don't agree with what the doctors don't know everything at all. I figured out that I was smarter than doctors. Shockingly, that should not be the case. But I was substantially smarter than doctors. That because of the hard work that the group us did, we were able, when they originally didn't find Christian's DNA and RNA sequencing, um, I won't name the facility because I don't want to get in trouble, but they didn't find it through their sequencing, and it wasn't good enough for us. We were like, I've got to keep searching. We got to do more DNA. We got to more find this out. Sure enough, somebody out in, I think, Seattle, a major DNA and RNA, facility, and by the works of John, and we went to John Hopkins as well. A doctor there um, helped us. We found the sequencing that Christian had, very specific, that allowed him to get onto a drug, pemigatinib, that is a full-fledged FDA drug that's out there for people with cholangiocarcinoma that can give you extra time.
Mhm.
It's not a game changer, but it just gives you extra time. And we were able to find that sequencing after hard work and getting him on that drug. But unfortunately, it didn't work. It didn't. Maybe it may. I don't. It didn't work. You know. We did everything, and Christian was one of the experimental kids for T cell therapy here in Pittsburgh, which the NIH in DC is one of the originators of this, and it's where they basically harvest the T cells out of your body, grow it in a petri dish, grow billions and billions and billions of these things, and then ultimately shut your body down, put it all back in you and eat the cancer away from the inside. It's the only way we were going to win here. And I knew of one case of this happening. I know her well. She's a friend of mine. She's very well known in the world of cancer. And but the problem is, to go on to that, he had to go off of chemotherapy for 13 weeks. And in that 13 weeks, I'm sure his cancer, it's extremely aggressive and it attacks every part of the body. And so it was by that point, then it's like scrambling. Once we realized the messaging, T cells they weren't working, you get that call and you just got to scramble like fast, get on the horn, let's get him back on chemo. What do we do? But towards the end, Christian just said we had been doing experimental drugs. Said, guys, like it's okay. He never got involved. Christian never got involved his own treatments, meaning he just said whatever you guys want to do. He goes, I'm fine with it. He was resigned to it all. He was fine with it all. And but I think towards the latter part where things were just not working, and he said, guys, this is I'm fine with no more. It's okay. I don't, I know I'm doing this for you, basically. It's what he was doing for us, right? He was like, whatever you want to do, but I'm okay. I'm at peace with what's happening, you know? So, um, so I'm not sure if I answered your question there, but, I think we were talking about my other kids, but I think for me, it was just, I was so focused on solving Christian's thing. I think my wife did a fantastic job just nurturing them. And then, obviously over time is when things were good and we'd have good days with Christian, you focus in on them and make sure they're getting everything they need. But his sister was at college, so she benefited from that during
Mm,
that time, in a sense. Like she didn't have to be
mhm.
around it. Unfortunately, my younger son, I think, has felt the blunt of a lot of this because he was home during COVID. And so he's in the house all the time. And he was there with Christian when he passed. He was in our house, surrounded by his family. So he was heavily involved as a 16, 17-year-old boy. That's not exactly what you want to have to go through. But he's a good boy and he's doing well.
Has that changed his trajectory of what he chose to endeavor in his life, that experience?
I don't know yet. I mean, he's obviously doing the same major. He's had some, I get too much into Nick. Nick doesn't like to, Nick's taking a different approach to everything. His sister can talk about this. This is not something Nick can talk about. It's not something that he is open about. I had to make sure, before I put the book out, I wanted Nick to read parts of the book that where I mention his name. Some things I did take out, things that are so personal to Nick that he just wants to keep it for himself.
Mhm.
But he's getting better at it, um, talking about it. But in terms of trajectory, don't know yet. I know a lot of his friends' trajectories have all changed. His best friends have all changed some are changed from being com artists to now being their counselors for helping those with um, challenges because of Christian. Um, there's those who have followed their passions that they wouldn't otherwise have followed. I know one in particular is a CPA, did a great job from left graduated Penn State, CPA. Now he's a comedian, you know. New York,
Got full body chills.
yeah, they just changed their trajectory because of because Christian of the group was going to be in many ways, I say famous, but the most well known. He was, if you from a young age, anybody, or in this whole community or neighborhood or Pittsburgh knew Christian. I mean, he was incredibly talented. And he was definitely destined. And he was scheduled to go to LA before all this. I mean, he was destined. He had everything. He was ready, and he was a good looking boy. He had it all, and he was likable. It's not like he had all the facets, and he didn't have this burning desire. I don't. He was okay. You think like, oh, you better have all this desire to be famous. He didn't have any of that. He took life as life came to him, and he got successful always doing it that way, right? He always got everything whether it was grades or being in parts and things like that by not even trying. He just because he had that aura of just likability and passion and fun to work with, and he just had that. And I just knew he was going to be incredibly successful. Even if he failed at something, he was just the one he's not the one that let it bother him. He just was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, we'll do this, and someone will be like, I like that about this. This kid had something very different.
You could pivot. Yeah.
He pivoted on a dime. It never affected him. And I think that's a major strength, um, in anything. And yeah, he had that. So.
Sounds like he taught everyone around him too how to be in the flow of life.
And I talk about that in the book, right? There's Christian's Tao. It's a section in the book, and Christian believed in Taoism, and he understood to your point, which is not flowing against the current, flowing with the current, and he lived that very much so. Christian was a strong Christian. We were Catholics. But the thing about Christian is he was very spiritual and he understood faiths. He respected them so much because there are a lot of similarities between all the faiths. But the way Christian lived his life as a Tao is just being able to take things in and never afraid to be himself. He would wear the goofiest clothes. He didn't care. It could be bright colors. It could be googie sweaters, from the 80s. He's an 80s guy. He loved that. Um, his last tweet on Twitter is him in a wheelchair. This is the comedy of Christian. He understood things. He's got a Walkman on, and he goes, jam into my 80s Walkman, or I'm not going to do this justice, but Walkman, not lately, meaning he's not walking, right? I think he could just,
Yeah.
he can't walk anymore because of the cancer
Play
in
on
his bones.
words.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he just, yeah, he could make something that you would otherwise go feel bad for him, but he would make you laugh about it. And that's such a unique trait to have under those circumstances.
What has your grief taught you?
Um, well, my grief's taught me that there's much bigger grief than mine, I guess. I've having a platform, the book is simply a tool, you know, and my voice meeting people and connecting with people is the best form to understand grief. I recommend that to anybody who's listening to connect as best you can. I've connected, so I go and I speak. Sometimes these speeches are about inspiration, how to find the light in the darkness, and sometimes it's the students, young adults, university level. But sometimes it's adults, and that will draw a different crowd. So sometimes the crowds I will get will be those who are going through immense grief, those who have either read the book, want to get the book, know something about the book, know something about my story, and they want to come. And I make a very distinct point to try to talk to every single person who comes to see me. They're going out of their way to see me. There's something going on with them, and they're using me, and I'm there to be a person to listen and to help. And so I listen to stories. And so what it's taught me, to answer your question, is the grief that I hear from others is far greater than my grief. If that makes sense, because some people are hurting so badly. I mean, the stories I hear, whether it's they've lost their husband and two children, or two children, I can't even fathom that, you know. Um, so I think it's taught me to understand my fellow man. It's also grieving has helped me to look at people as true souls. And what I mean by that is I don't think I looked at people before cancer as souls. Meaning, when I look at someone, I just saw them as a person and they're on their way, whatever. I spend a lot of time when I sit or if I'm out in public and I watch people and I look at them and I realize they have a soul, they have a life, something's going on in their life. Could be good, could be bad, much like all of us. And and I think I'm just connected that way a little better now. Maybe I wish I wasn't. Sometimes it can drag me down, but I guess it's my purpose. I'm still trying to figure that purpose out, but I think that's how I've learned the grief has helped me, and that's what I've learned from it. Yeah.
How would you describe, and that kind of leads to my next question, how would you describe the Chris before Christian passed and the Chris now? You mentioned more connected,
Yeah.
maybe more spiritual in that way.
Hmm.
How else would you have described yourself before Christian passed?
I was like a lot of people. I just think I had goals, money, better car, bigger house, more stuff maybe. I love my kids, give them whatever they need, be there for my wife. I mean, I don't know. I was just in a different mindset. It's because life is perfect, you know? I mean, yeah, there's the normal things of life, right? I mean, we all go through, whether it's maybe not enough or bills or I don't know, someone passes away or I mean, it's just normal stuff. But you navigate that pretty quickly and you're just on to and I used to hear of other people who would get sick. And I would be part of the cookie drive or whatever food drive and you know, but I just did it, you know, and I had compassion for it. I just don't think I really truly get it till I'm the guy getting the food drive for my son. I'm the guy with signs out in front of my house. I'm the one who's, you know, where they give you the pity face or whatever that is, you know? And it's not about me. It's just Christian, you know? I think I mean, I'm just not that guy. I don't even know who that guy is. I try to look back on that guy and I just kind of think of him as kind of not a, I don't know. I don't like that guy.
Mm.
I mean, I wasn't a bad guy. I'm just saying I'm not sure I recognize that person because now I look at life very differently. I look at other people differently. I try to give everybody kindness at the fullest extent, you know, even when someone's mean to me. It's okay. I'm okay with it. The old one be like, you know, I'd say anything. I'd be mean right back to you, you know. I'd be brutal. But I don't want any of that. I want nothing to do with that. Because I think in the end, you know, for me, and I think for my family too, is the ultimate goal is I want to go see Christian again. I'm not going to get there if I don't do good things. It's not going to happen. So I think my focus is how do I get to see this kid again? Because I miss him. So
How do you think it's changed your wife and your marriage?
yeah, it's changed it. It definitely changed it. I mean, you know, it's her firstborn, you know. He's yeah, it's changed her totally. You know, she's still sweet, loving, but it's a daily routine, right? Um, it's a daily struggle. I'll put it that way. It's a daily struggle. Um, you know, in terms of marriage, we love each other, but it's different. You know, how can it not be different?
Hmm.
It's just different. It's just different. It's not bad, you know. I mean, but it's different because you know it's you struggle. You're I think it's a struggle for her too, right? To witness if I go through difficult things too, right? Um, doing talks or speaking, even this discussion today, it takes a lot out of me, right? It will end. We go about our lives. It still takes a bit of chunk of my body out of me. Um, and I think that's the same way for us. It's like when you talk about it or you go through it, it's a reminder, right? Nothing's changed in my house, right? And since Christian's room's the same as when he left it, his shoes are here, you know, nothing from that perspective, but he's just not here anymore. So for her, yeah, she's a mother. You know, I'm sure mothers who listen to this will get it. Um, I mean, it's bad for a dad too. Don't get me wrong. It is. It's horrible. But I just think a mother has a different connection with their children. They bore that child, they brought that child into this world, and she's a nurturing parent. In ways, his kindness is driven off of how she's um, raised him. We both raised him. I'm more the tough, get it done, let's go, you know. She's soft and gentle and caring. And so, you know, I think yeah, it's tough for her. It's tough for her.
How have you taken care of and tended to yourself as a grieving man and spouse? You know, it's easy for women to talk about self-care and all of that, but when it
Yeah.
comes to men, which, oh no, of course, you know, you kind of alluded to that, but a lot when parents are grieving a child, or a lot of the focus does go on the mother, right? And the husband and the spouse, the father is not disregarded or not, but they don't get as much attention, right?
No, I get it. Yeah.
And so I want to, you know, what helped you personally, like in self-care in the years since, particularly?
Yeah. For me, it's just staying busy. I mean, I'm a simple guy. I'm not there's no complexity. I have certainly have my moments. Uh, I talk to Christian a lot, so I have a relationship with Christian, much like I have a relationship with God. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good, but it's a relationship. Um, I just talk to Christian. And I hear him. So, that gives me a lot of comfort. Um, I can absolutely hear him. So for me, it's stay busy, stay active, stay constantly engaged with guy things, I guess, whether it's working on a car or just working on my business, writing, those are the things that occupy me as a man. And of course, being engaged with my other children, and my wife, doing things, right? It's very important. Going on vacations together. We're going to go to Europe, I think, this December for a couple weeks to get away. So we do things together. We're tight knit and we love being around each other. And so I think, I try to put a lot of effort in as best I can to those things, and most importantly my family, my kids. Talk to them every day, always communicate constantly. Sometimes my daughter doesn't want to hear from me, but uh like, and you just called me, leave me alone. But I just like hearing my kids, so make sure they're okay. I mean, I'm part of, it's so funny. Back in my day, my parents probably didn't care where the heck I went, you know I don't know if you were the same way. It's like
Yeah.
I got on my bike and as a kid,
Yep.
and when it started to get dark, so when I came home. Um, and my parents, they were great parents. It's just the way life was, right? And today we're like helicopter parents. We don't know where they're always at. I mean, my daughter's married and I still have my iPhone. I know where she's at all the time, you know.
She
Like
hasn't
I
turned that off on you?
no, she knows I do it, and she's okay with it. She knows that. She's fine with it. Plus, I think I pay her bill still. I don't know why I still do that, but yeah, I'm always before I go to sleep at night and I'm go to sleep, I want to see where they're at. Are they okay? Are they safe? My wife too, she does the same thing. So, I mean, so we're probably a little obsessive on that, but I think, it's natural for us too, right? We were always that way when Christian was here. Mm, Interestingly enough, probably more for Christian, even
Mm.
before the cancer. I always, my wife and I would always, it's the one thing we prayed about is our whole life having kids is just to keep them safe. I didn't care about anything else. Money is irrelevant. Everything's irrelevant, right? Being safe, healthy, alive is all that matters because you can fix everything else. Everything's fixable. Money's fixable. Relationships can be fixed, but I can't fix death. I can't fix when they're hurt. And I think with Christian in particular, I always was nervous about Christian. Always. I've never not been nervous about Christian in particular, even um, not because he got into bad things or something like that. It's just he was such a good kid. He was always doing good things. He was just so good and a nice boy and loved us deeply, loves his family deeply. Um, that it always was a concern of mine that something was going to be happen just because he's just too good. Can't be this good. I can't be allowed to have it this good, you know.
Sound like you
So,
have an adventurous spirit too.
oh yeah, I will tell you that like go, we would go on trips as a group, and he was always the most daring of all of us. So if there was a road like Like we would be like here, and Christian would be the one to take us down a beaten path. Like he was always the one to go like, we need to go down that road because there's gonna be something really awesome down that road. I'm telling you. And be like, Christian, please stop this shenanigans. Like we have a destination, we have time schedule. He said, no, 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 no. Yeah, please trust me on this. It's gonna be great. And we trust him because he's smart and he sure enough, be something extraordinary, It'd be like a giant, we went west and he'd be like, go here and it'd be a giant crater in the middle of the desert. And it is goofy as that is, and as baseline as that is, it's like the beauty of it all, just together to see this, it creates a incredible feeling. And but he knew that. He knew that he was going to create something special for us. And so he had a way of doing that all the time. It was just constant. So yeah, he was adventurous and always sort of creatively thinking of ways to think differently.
What do you look forward to most in co-creating in your life that has been inspired by Christian?
Well, to continue, for me, it's the legacy of Christian is what's good about today, right? I think the truth is I don't really know. Um, I don't look too far. And,
Mm.
that's my point. I really do focus on today. I focus on the moment, my present moment with you. I'm all in with you, right? I haven't thought really, other than the questions you asked me, it's just about you and me today, right now. So I'm often doing something else, I'm present there. But I think I have found that things kind of come my way, right? It's the Taoism of things. I let things flow the way they're going to flow. And in Christian's legacy, things tend to flow, come up out of nowhere. Whether it means someone wanting me to speak somewhere, whether it means someone else taking the initiative to build something around Christian, right? There are a lot of things that are going on around Christian that I'm not always, I get, if you want to call it approval, but people call me and say, hey, we're doing this whole thing around Christian. What's good about today? And they're implementing it in school districts now, right? I'm working with teachers now to implement what's good about today in K through 12, and especially in younger kids, where they have a board says what's good about today, and kids come in the morning, write what's good about their day, and the first thing in the morning, and the end of the day they erase it, and the next day come and do it again. And it's a teaching tool for teachers to be able to see how their students, how their day is, right? They can identify kids who are not having good days,
Of that.
and they can see where things are not going well in certain areas. But it's a way to help children too young, because I do believe, you know, sometimes when we're old and we don't get this messaging when we're young about understanding the beauty of every single day, we forget about it when we get old. And we forget about gratefulness. We forget about presentness. We forget about all those things because we get caught up in the minutia of keeping up with the Joneses and doing all these things, to-dos. But I do think, and Christian used to have something, he used to call him to love list. He didn't have to-do list. He had to love list. And so I try to do the same thing. It's just how much love can I give out today? And so so I don't know where it takes me. I only know, what tomorrow will come, and new things will pop up, and and I'm usually a yes, the yes guy is like, yeah, let's do it. Whatever it takes, whatever it is to educate, whatever it is to get this word out about what's good about today. Help them ask themselves that question in the morning, the afternoon, and in the evening, so they can reflect and see that life was so beautiful. And and it is. So that's my hope.
I love that idea too. My sister-in-law is a superintendent. I'm going to mention it to her.
Please, love to get it out there in North Dakota, right?
Yep. Yep.
That would be amazing. Yeah, that would be wonderful.
You kind of touched on it that your relationship with Christian has continued and you talk to him. How do you how would you describe how that has helped you in your healing, your spiritual beliefs around that there is something after?
Great question. Uh, well, I firmly and absolutely believe there is somewhere we all go. I do I know this because I actually talk about it in the book that Christian came and visited me about 2 weeks after his passing. So this happened um, prior to Christian passing. I remember being close to him and asking him with crying. I remember this and is buried in his neck and said, Christian, I need you to do me a favor. And he said, sure, Dad, whatever you want. And I said, look, I need to, you have to come see me after you're gone. It's so important because we're going to be a wreck. I said, I need some understanding of this stuff, you know. He said, Dad, I promise you, I will be back. I promise you. This is absolutely, and this is a kid, when he said it, he meant it. And I knew it. So, um, about a week after Christian passed, hope you don't mind me going into the story.
No, I don't.
Okay. So a week after Christian passed, I was muddling down to the mailbox down my hill. And as I'm walking down the hill to my mailbox, I can see the mail carrier coming down the street. And she had a green bow in her car for Christian Love Green. And she subsequently had written us before again and said, listen, I wanted you to know something about your son that we didn't know. Your son, every time I would be on my mail routes and he saw me, he'd pull over and come and talk to me and tell me. And I don't have anybody who does that. Everybody runs from the mail person. She goes, I don't know why, but your son was the one who would come to me and want to know about my life and ask if I was doing good and how my life was. And so she's like, he's so important. And I was like, yeah, I know that. And I hear that from a lot of people. So as I'm walking down, instead of reaching in Baba, she's coming out. She hands me the mail. And as I'm reaching out for the mail, this beautiful blue butterfly, I don't get butterflies around here. Beautiful blue butterfly, huge, lands on my hand. And I'm in a bit of a weird state anyway. And I looked at her and I said, am I seeing things? Because I thought maybe I was hallucinating. I didn't know and probably was on medication at the time. But she said, no, that I'm seeing exactly what you're seeing. And I was like, okay. And that butterfly sat there for 10, 15 seconds, just hanging out on my hand. And I'm holding the mail, not moving. And it fluttered and disappeared. And I was like, okay. And I always had the sense of butterflies, and people talk about butterflies and what they mean. And I'm okay. It's what it is. And told my wife. And so about another week later, I'm laying in bed. And I remember this as if I'm here talking to you. I was put in a position in a basement. I'm in a basement. There's cinder blocks around me. It's a cinder block old home, as if it had just been built. And there's a patio walkout door, and it's green. It's green, bright lights, really pretty. And I went, oh my gosh, I'm in somebody's house. What am I doing here? As soon as I said that, I got moved into a foyer. And the foyer's it was tile, little square tiles, kind of like 5x5s, tiles, gray. And the door is like a 1970s door, 80s door. It had those step ladder windows, if you remember.
Mhm.
Couldn't see out of them. And a wooden door. And I'm thinking, oh, great. Where the heck am I? And I remember turning to my left, and about 10, 15 feet away is Christian at a mantle fireplace. By the way, very bright, very beautiful. There's two chairs sitting to the left and front. They swiveled, and there were two people in them. They were shadowy figure, but they were moving. They were shadows. I couldn't make who they were or what they were. And Christian's in his beautiful, beautiful hair, in one of his sweaters, smiling, but he had this smile that was like, see, I told you I'd be back. He didn't have to say it. And I, of course, immediately wanted to rush to Christian, run. But as soon as I started to move, he immediately was in my face. He was right there in my face. And I, of course, put my arms around him. Um, I could smell Christian. And he started to talk to me. He said, hey, Dad, he said, listen, I love you. I need you to tell Mom everything is okay. Everything is fine. I'm very happy. Everything's going to be fine. And you guys need to move on. And I said, Christian, I love you. I love you. I'm talking. I'm feeling every bit of him. And, I didn't see any lips moving. Kind of wrapped and he's talking to me. And I remember, by the way, I should say that not only did I see these two people, I could design the whole room to you because there was like a step kitchen up there and people were mulling about in shadows. Like it was almost like I was invited to a dinner party or something. Like I was somebody's house. I don't know whose house. I just assumed it was Christian's house, maybe, or his apartment. Makes sense because of the door. Um, I don't know. But I know for a fact what I experienced was not a dream because I didn't wake up. I was in this weird state. Um, I can't remember any dream I've had, honestly. It's the only thing I remember, and it was that moment and how deep it was and how real it was. And so he just faded away, and I faded back into who I was. And I sat there for about an hour. Just, I didn't want to wake up my wife. She was next to me and tell her. But for about an hour, I just sat there and said, I can't believe what just happened to me. I'm in this unbelievable, I can't believe it. He said he'd do it. He did it. I went somewhere I wasn't supposed to go. This was not a dream. And I was like, and I tried to convince him, yeah, it was a dream. No, it couldn't have been a dream. I smelled him. He was real. I was there. And so my wife woke up about an hour later and I told her what had happened. It's verbatim. She says, Chris, last night I went out on the porch. I prayed to Christian so deeply, just asked him to come see us. Come see us, please. Because I never told her, you know, this discussion I had with Christian. And then I told her this, and this is what happened. And he's never come to visit Danielle. It's never happened. And I have subsequently not seen Christian since then, in any form of state like that. I've had dreams that are weird but nothing to this that was as crystal clear as this. Christian does talk to me. I do hear him. I'll ask him questions, sometimes about life and just the other side, what's going on. Um, Sometimes I try to reach out to him. He doesn't get back to me. It's not instantaneous. Sometimes he'll come back to me and with frustration, like, what do you need now? I get a sense he's very busy. So, he compassionately sweet and nice to me, just more like, hey, what can I do, Dad? I'm busy with stuff, what can I get you? What do you need? And sometimes it's just reassurance, And so that's what I hear. It's gotten a little less now, but I still do it. Just not constantly.
I had a conversation. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Hmm.
First of all, I had a conversation with she doesn't call herself a medium. She calls herself an intuitive, Helen Gretchen Jones, and it'll be coming out around the time of your
Okay.
episode too. But um, I've had other mediums that say that those who have crossed over describe it like school, and it's almost like community. It's like they're in community. So when you said that,
Hmm.
it reminded me of those conversations of how they're not alone, right? They're
Right.
in community with others, mingling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've asked Christian that question too, actually, interestingly enough. Like, when you die, I've said, well, do you have famous? Because there's so many people have died who are famous,
Mhm.
right? I mean, this lifetime. I'm like, are you friends with famous people? Do you hang around with famous people? And his answer is no, I don't. That's not and that makes sense. I do hang around with people who are famous, but they're not people you would ever know. Like they're the obscure famous people, like the most obscure people that no one's ever going to know, but they were in their moment, had some form of they were important or, you know, um, so, yeah, I find that interesting, but much of his friends are just regular people, just normal people, for the most part, from everything he tells me that it is communal. It's not much different as it's explained to me in the way that it has been explained in the short conversations, Christian, is that it's not dissimilar to this in many ways. there's much to do. You're never bored. Um, there's lots of choices and you can be with your friends. You can check in on people, loved ones. You can do all those things, so, um, sometimes he'll tell me things that are so above me in my brain, and sometimes I can't even explain them. I don't know if that even makes sense. Like he'll explain a multi-level thing that something happening that I don't even know how to explain it. Like I wouldn't even know how to, I'm not smart enough to be able to regurgitate it back out to another human without it sounding like I'm completely insane. It's not like he said something so it's just like it has so many layers to it
Mhm.
that I don't know how to explain it properly and just leave it with inside my brain of sort of rolling around and figuring it out as best I can.
Is there anything else that you would like to share that you don't feel you got to?
But no, I think you've gotten a lot about me. Like I say, it sounds like I was in therapy here. Um, no, I just think those who are listening who are going through grief, and I think what you offer here is very important. It's very important because grief is something not everybody's going to go through. It's a universal trait that we all are going to have it. If you don't think you're going to have it, you're going to get it.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it offers an opportunity to explore how each of us navigate it, how best to navigate it. And ultimately for me, I want people to remind themselves is that and I say it what's good about today is because I want them to focus on today, focus on the beauty in what you have around you right now, your family, kids, um, you know, if it, anything that can bring you a little bit of pieces of joy into your heart, right? Because if you've lost someone, there's a chunk that just gets ripped out of you. And your job is just to continue to fill it with little pieces. You never, happiness is that elusive thing, right? I don't know that I'll ever be happy. Maybe I'll be happy when my daughter has her firstborn, and that will bring me some happiness, and I'm sure it will. And I'm sure I find those things when I can, but joy, pieces of joy are what I try to pick up along the way. So I tell people pick up pieces of joy every which way you can, something that brings you some joy in your life. And I think if you continue to build upon that, you build something, a good solid puzzle in your heart, and you can you learn to continue to move forward in this life. It's all very short anyway. I mean, that's not the downer part of me. I'm not trying to be a downer. It's just that when you really think about it, it's extremely short. And you just want to leave a good legacy. You want to do the right thing. You want to help as many people as you can. Help put your energy into helping others. Um, and I think that can help you in grief, right? Helping others who are
Hmm.
hurting. Right? It's a good way to navigate your own grief is to see other people's hurt and help them because now you're just suffering is it is part of the human condition. It is what we do to get closer to God. It's what gets us closer to all things. The more we suffer, unfortunately, I think that is by many means, and at least I've convinced myself that I've been asked to suffer, my family's been asked to suffer because it gets us closer to God. It allows us to get to where we need to be forever. This is short. So that's what I would leave.
It's beautiful. And it makes us more compassionate, is what you've
Absolutely.
described, is it brings out the compassion. Our suffering
Yeah.
brings out our compassion. It can bring, we have a choice, right? If it brings out our compassion or if we project out our pain onto others.
That's true. And I think suffering is in the form of your own suffering, of course, but the more you take on of other people's suffering, I know that sounds, a lot of people run from suffering. Most
Hmm.
people run from suffering, right? Because they don't want to deal with it. Like, I don't want to deal with that problem. But I would tell you to run to it.
Be the
Run to
buffalo.
suffering. Huh?
Be the buffalo.
Yeah. Oh, what's the buffalo?
Well,
Be
buffalo, I'm in North Dakota, remember, with
right,
that
right,
PSU bison.
right.
But buffalo actually run through a storm because they know it's a shorter
Mm,
path to where they need to go instead of taking the long way and going around it.
I
Buffalo
didn't know
actually go
that.
through the storm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
See, I'm in Pittsburgh. We don't get buffalo. Well, there used to be buffalo around here. Used to be a lot of buffalo, but yeah, you have it, so you would know. Um,
Bison is it's very good too, by the
I
way.
know
Yeah.
I see it on the menu a lot. I see it a lot. But yeah, no, I think run the suffering can be a big reward.
One final question.
Mm.
What's good about today?
What's good about today? Well, it's easy. I'm here with you. I get to talk about this. I get to speak to your audience. I get to share Christian story. I get to remind people the goodness in the day. So today, what's good about today is that I am here with you talking about this. So that was an easy one because I'm with you. So anything I'm doing in the moment is what's good about today. So it's definitely what's good about today. And I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to speak with you.
It was wonderful having you.
Thank
And where
you.
can people find you if they would like to reach out, learn more about the foundation, organization, the book, all of that?
Yeah. So first and foremost, if you go to Christian, you could Google Christian Cochran, you probably pull up all kinds of stuff. But if you went to christiancochran.com or .org, you'll find all kinds of information on Christian, which is really the most important thing to me is just that you know my son. And everything else after that is good too, but that's most important to learn about his legacy and how he lived his life. Because I do believe that, the more you learn about Christian and the things that he did, it can help you learn little pieces how to lead a purposely driven life. You can certainly pick up my book on that website, but you can also find me at chriscochranspeaks.com, which is where I do speaking engagements, sell the book. And the book is available on Amazon. It's available at Barnes and Noble. It's available for global distribution. And I hope people read it. It's a love story. So I want to make sure people understand that this is not certainly you can get a lot from it and learning about how grief, to navigate grief. But I try to explain this is really a love story. It's a love story about a family. Love story about a family that's gone through the worst thing and how we navigated it, but telling a story about how Christian led his life. And that's the point. To me, it is a book about a purposely driven life, not my purposely driven life. That's why it says Chris Cochran inspired by Christian Cochran, because it's really him. And it's me trying to explain how he lived a life that we can all take pieces from and do better in this life.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I
Thank
will
you.
put those links in the show notes. And remember, when you unleash your heart, you unleash your life. Much love.